offer on all these themes. But perhaps the most important insight that could be drawn from the Indian experience is the Indian ability to work with everyone, to build bridges, to build consensus. And that is the reason for the strong bedrock on which Indian democracy stands. We always talk about unity in diversity as a characteristic theme of India. Friends, individuals are different, they are diverse by nature. That is how human beings are. They are structured to be different. So what is the important thing is the Indian ability to work with differences, differences of language, differences of belief systems, and to build bridges. It is this that characterizes the Indian way of life. This is as much a matter of theory as a matter of practice. And I invite all of you who are present here today to experience this lived reality of India. In fact, I would say that these characteristics, these are civilizational values, the ability to build consensus, the ability to deal with conflicts, the ability to involve everyone in the tasks of governance. It is these civilizational values that are reflected in everything that we do. And perhaps this is one of the most important insights of all the insights that this great nation has to offer us. And perhaps this is also why the theme of Youth for Democracy and Governance is the most important of all the themes that we discuss today. It is in a vibrant democracy that we would be able to discuss the best ideals for working together and building a common future. So today we invite all of you for a very stimulating discussion and to partake of the amazing hospitality that has been extended by the government of Assam. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you. Let the deliberations begin.
Thank you, respected Srimati Meeta Rajiv Lochanji, Secretary Youth Affairs, Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, for the opening remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, now for the introduction, I invite Shri Phalit Sijaria ji, official delegate from Y20 India. Phalit ji.
Namaste and greetings to everyone. Can we please have a huge round of applause, first of all, for the great cruise and the concert that we had yesterday. The hospitality that was given to us by the government of Assam was something that is beyond measurable, right? And when we are talking about Youth 20 and the way we are moving forward, I'm extremely privileged to say that Youth 20 is the most premier engagement group. And the question might come as to why is it so? Because all the engagement groups would be talking about various aspects. They would be covering their domains. But the point that we have to raise is youth is one segment that lies at the intersection of all of these. So if there is Startup 20, there can be no startups without the youth. If there is Woman 20, there is youth in women. Similarly, if there is Business 20, then there are youth involved in businesses. So we are a stakeholder in almost all the engagement groups. And that is also why our leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, our Youth Minister Shri Anurag Thakur ji, and others have left no stone unturned in providing support to Youth 20. So while the introduction ma'am already gave about the themes and a lot of different aspects, what I try to do is give you two various different perspectives. I would segment it into two parts. The first being Y20, the India way. Exactly what is it that we are adding? How are we doing Y20 differently than what has happened before? And finally, the broader framework within which our negotiations and consensus building would be taken forward. So while when we talk about Y20 the India way, there is generally a discourse that goes around in the world that policy making is an urban affair. You look at most of the policy making decisions, the voices that are taken into account, and this is something that we are trying to change. Drawn by India's legacy as the mother of democracy, what we are trying to do is democratize the decision-making process. So while in almost all the Y20s, the representatives go and talk about their perspectives, what Indian representatives and Indian Y20 would be doing would be democratizing it and taking it to across the length and breadth of the country. When you talk about something as unique as Y20 Chopal, where we'd be interacting with the rural youth, can you imagine that we plan to host over 2,000 Y20 Chopals across the country? The scale of it. And this is something which is bigger than any Y20 has ever had. Beyond that, what we plan to do is take it to both the rural areas and also the urban areas. And how would we do that? Through Y20 talks, Y20 study circles. We plan to bring forth the perspectives of all the youth members and all the premier institutions. So at one end, while we are talking about the premier institutions, at the other end, we are covering the unorganized and the rural segment, so that the voices that come forth are democratized. And now second, when we talk about the perspective or the broader segment in which India would be talking, that is to democratize not just within the country, but democratize the sphere of global policy making. And how would we do that exactly, right? And this is something that our leadership has continuously said again and again, that India's G20 presidency is about raising the voices of the global south. The countries that had hitherto been unaddressed, whose voices were not given dominant space. And that space would be given by India. So when you look at the themes that Y20 has very carefully chosen, while at one point we talk about Industry 4.0 and innovation and the changes that are happening, simultaneously we also talk about climate change and mission life or lifestyle for environment. While at one end we talk about health, well-being and sports, the other we also talk about youth and democracy. And why again so? Because we need youth to be the driver of the democracy. We need youth participation in the democratic processes. We can no longer say that XYZ is the problem. We have to come forward and say that this is the solution that we propose and we want the government to adopt. We have to be the solution builders, not just problem pointers. And this positive approach is something that is very strongly imbibed in the Y20 process. And finally, one of the most important themes is peace building and reconciliation. This would be the first time that such large-scale democratic narrative building would happen on peace building from a youth perspective. When you look at major peace building discussions, it is almost always, dominated by the populace that is already passing the youth phase. And it is for the first time that we would be talking about the youth perspective, the challenges that we face, the ambitions and the aspirations that we have, and something which has not been truly reflected till now. So Y20 in one way, Y20 India would be something that changes the discourse and sets it for the years to come. And I would like to end with one common question that a lot of countries and journalists pose to our leadership as to which pole would India go towards. And the answer is very clear, something that is also very strongly reflected in the values of Y20 India, is that India is a pole unto itself, and a pole that bridges the gap between the developing and the developed world, between the global north and the global south, and is one that is trusted by all. With this, I'd like to end. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Shri Sajaria ji, for the introduction, for your pertinent remarks. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we'll start with our technical sessions. So today we are going to have 5 sessions. So for the first session, our compare would be Nilmi Kumar ji. May I invite Nilmi ji on stage? Nilmi ji? It's all over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I would like to request our panelist and moderator for the first theme to come on stage, General Vijay Kumar Singh, Shri Tejasvi Surya, Lieutenant General Satish Dua, Shri Gyanendra Pratap Singh, Shri Hiren Chandra Nath, Bipul Kalita, Binwal Wari, and our moderator, Kanchan Gupta, to join us on the stage. So good morning, everyone. I, Nilmi Kaur, research scholar of the Department of Political Science, Guwahati University, take the privilege to welcome you all to the Y20 Inception Meeting 2023 in IIT Guwahati. Our first panel discussion of today will be on the theme, Peace Building and Reconciliation, Ushering in an Era of No War. Let me introduce our distinguished panelists on the stage. General Vijay Kumar Singh. He is the Minister of State in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways and Ministry of Civil Aviation, Government of India. He served as the Chief of Army Staff from 2010 to 2012, where he was responsible for overseeing the Indian Army's modernization and restructuring initiatives. He also possesses vast experience in the areas of peace building and reconciliation. Our next panelist is Shri Tejasvi Surya, who is the Member of Parliament from the Bangalore South constituency in Karnataka, India. He is a young and dynamic leader known for his speeches and activism, particularly in the areas of national security, foreign policy, and social justice. Prior to his election to the Parliament, he was a practicing advocate. He has the distinction of being one of the youngest members of the Indian Parliament. Our third distinguished panelist is Lieutenant General Satish Dua, who is highly decorated officer of the Indian Army, having received numerous awards and citations for his service to the nation. After retiring from the Army, General Dua continued to serve the nation through his involvement in various social and civic organizations. He is respected and influential voice on the national security and defense matters and is widely regarded as an expert in these fields. Moving forward to our fourth panelist is Shri Gyanendra Pratap Singh, who is an IPS officer and is presently serving as the Director General of Police in the state of Assam. Throughout his career, he has served in various challenging assignments, gaining a reputation for his integrity, courage, and leadership skills. He is known for his expertise in counterterrorism, anti-narcotics, and intelligence operations, and has made significant contributions to the security and stability of the country. Now, we are also joined by Shri Hiren Chandra Nath, who is an IPS officer known for his dedication to duty, professionalism, and integrity. Throughout his career, he has served in various challenging assignments and has gained a reputation for his expertise in the areas such as counterinsurgency, intelligence, and security operations. He is widely regarded as a knowledgeable and effective leader and is recognized for his contributions to the public safety and security in India. We are also joined amongst us Bipul Kalita, who had joined ULFA in the year 1986 and surrendered in the year 2000. And we are also joined by Binwal Wari, who joined NDFB in the year 2002, but had joined peace building process since 2005. Both are now engaged in the peace building initiatives of the region. Last but not the least, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the panel discussion, Sri Kanchan Gupta sir, who is the Senior Advisor, Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, and former member, the National Security Advisory Board. He is also a senior journalist and political analyst with over 4 decades of experience. He has also worked as an official at the PMO during the tenure of Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. So I would like to hand over the session to our moderator, Mr. Kanchan Gupta sir. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to welcome all of you to this session. The topic, as you know, is peace building and reconciliation, ushering in an era of no war. Now, by itself, it's a very big canvas we are looking at. There is the global canvas and India's role in peacemaking and also peacekeeping. There is the regional canvas, where India has played a very significant role in peacemaking and peacekeeping. And then, of course, there's the national canvas, where the Indian state has had to deal with various aspects, various disruptive aspects of a young democracy, which is still sort of evolving into maturity. Now, what sort of undergirds these three canvases is the unique Indian way of conceptualizing peace, of making peace, and of keeping peace. So if you look at it from our civilizational perspective, India as a nation has never been a nation that went to war. When I say went to war, I mean India was never an aggressive nation. It did not wage war for territory. Every time we got drawn into war was either to protect our territory or to stand up for a righteous principle, as we saw in 1971. But otherwise, from the time this civilization takes form and shape, India has never been a conflict maker. We have been a conflict resolver. And the only powerful export which India has done to the world is the idea of peace, and that is by way of Buddhism, which went beyond India's shores. And lastly, we must not forget, and since we are meeting in the G20 year, this is very much a G20 event, India's idea of peace and peacemaking revolves around what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in the context of the conflict in Ukraine, that this is not the time for war. Because more than anybody else, at least more than the developed West, India understands that the key to development and key to sustainable development is peace. And the antithesis to that is conflict. So I will stop over there. I just wanted to contextualize the discussion. We have distinguished panelists with us, and they will, the way we have structured this session is that everybody will come in with a brief 3-minute introductory comment. Immediately after that, we will move into the question-answer session. For the sake of diversity, to ensure diversity, we will take questions in English, Hindi, and Assamese. So while you are hearing to the speakers, please formulate your questions They should be sharp, pointed, and not more than 30 seconds long. So your time begins now to start thinking up of the questions. And we will begin with General V.K. Singh. I would request him to come in first with his thoughts on peacemaking, peacekeeping.
Thank you very much, all our distinguished panelists and all the delegates for Y20 who are sitting here. A very good morning to each one of you. Let me begin by saying that any conflict situation emanates from what you have within a particular region. If we take India, it is diverse geographically, it is diverse in the point of view of the way our population is. Every 200 kilometers you'll find a change in dialect. It is diverse linguistically. It is diverse from religious and social context that we have. It is diverse politically, and it is diverse climatically. Today you are in the eastern part of the country. You would have felt how green it is. It is different than some of the areas of India which are further towards our west. All this diversity contributes towards different perceptions that take place. All this diversity creates disharmony if it is not managed properly. And this diversity, if it is taken as a strength, as India has taken, it creates a different dynamics of its own. The question that comes up is, how do conflicts occur internally first, and which lead to any external conflict subsequently? The very first thing is the social economic condition that prevails in the region, which creates haves and have-nots. It creates dissensions in the minds of people, which leads to conflict. It is further strengthened if you have widespread unemployment, because it further strengthens this haves and have-not condition. You have motivation to take part in conflict for looking for a better future. A lot of people get carried away thinking that conflict will lead to a better future. You have some people who join because people who are already in conflict are able to create a fear psychosis. And therefore, people are made to join even if they are probably unwilling to join. You have the phenomena of seeking power. Somebody who is not in power wants to seek power. You generate conflict so that you can come into the forefront. You have issues where external support is concerned. Neighbors who may be inimical to you. And therefore, the fire is fueled by external support. You have internal, like I said, diversity in political this thing. You have internal political conflict that carries on. Everybody trying to run down the other system, thinking that their system is the very best. It leads to conflict. And the glamour of conflict, unfortunately, attracts the youth. It is the glamour at times which takes the youth towards joining a conflict situation. Now, youth is the most impressionable age in any community. They are the ones who either get carried away or contribute towards subsequent reconciliation and peacemaking. This is something which we need to take back with us, because it is the youth who will matter in how a nation will run in the future. Similarly, what is to be done, we will have expert opinions on that. The Indian approach has been to look at the issues in terms of whether it is just or unjust. It is the approach in which you try to look at what is part of the Constitution and what is not part of the Constitution. what is it that needs to be done to ensure social harmony and economic equality. What is to be done in terms of ensuring that everybody gets same opportunities and the processes become transparent so that there is much more confidence of the population in that. Now, with all this combined is the process of reconciliation that starts. Reconciliation which is done with heart in it will succeed. Any reconciliation which only depends on force is unlikely to succeed. Force is to be used to ensure that you hit at the root cause, but you use harmony, you use sympathy, you use compassion to ensure that things which have gone bad, where you can turn the people around, can be turned around. And this has been the general approach which you will find as a thread which runs through India's experience of peace and reconciliation, peace building, ensuring that things become all right, and suitable opportunities are then provided to assimilate people who got misled. If you don't provide that, then things go wrong. So, since you are in Assam, you must have read what Assam has been all about. You would have understood what led to certain things. And today when you look at Assam, you will find a totally different Assam because this whole process of reconciliation has taken place. With this I end and let the other speakers take on.
Thank you, General Singh. Mr. Tejashwi Surya, you are a youth leader, you are a young MP, I think among one of the youngest, if not the youngest. General Singh made this point that both conflict and peace impact youth the most. I would like you to take off on that and very briefly make an opening statement which sort of puts these three factors together: the youth, conflict, and peace.
Thank you. Thank you, Kanchanda, for setting in context General V.K. Singh's opening remarks. If there is one section of the demography, one section of the populace that gets disproportionately affected through war, through conflicts, it's always the young. Because it's their future that is always at stake. And therefore, it's very important to have a youth representation and the youth at the table while discussing issues like peace and conflict resolution. And it's very heartening that the Y20 Inception Meet at the very beginning has taken this subject and has given such a large number of young people an opportunity to put their case forward. I want to make three brief points on how and why the youth will play a very important role in conflict resolution and peacemaking. From the India perspective, like General Saab said, India is a land which is as diverse as it can get. Diversity in language, diversity in the way we dress, the language is spoken, the food that's eaten, climatic conditions, everything. But the one Indian lesson that can be taken at the global level to understand how India through its millennia has managed all of these diversities, how it has managed to ensure harmony between competing identities and competing forces, is the India lesson of not confusing unity to become uniformity. And the second Indian lesson of not confusing diversity to be discrimination. So when there is an attempt to force uniformity, certain sections of people feel that there is certain force that is being applied. But in India, unity has always been achieved, but it has been achieved not through forced uniformity. Diversity has always been respected, but it has never been confused as discrimination. So I think this is one very important lesson from the Indian context. The second important thing that the young of today realize, and we also face, is that the world today at the global level, thanks to technology, has become even more interconnected. Therefore, the challenges and problems that the young of the world today face is far more common and far more shared and far more nearer. So a startup in my city of Bengaluru will face problems in raising capital if the economy in the US is not doing very well. In the same way, a young entrepreneur, say starting out in India, may not do very well if the economy in Australia is not doing very well. Because the world is today so much more interconnected thanks to technology. And also, if you look at the last 10, 12 decades of the experience of the last 3, 4 decades, one will realize that the scale of problems that the present generation of young people are facing at the global level is very different from and globalized than what it was earlier. For example, the problem of how disrupting new technologies, whether it may be artificial intelligence or whether it may be machine learning, how is that going to transform the jobs of the future is something that affects a young person, whether it's in the global north or the global south. The challenge of climate change affects a young person, whether he is in the North American continent or whether he is in a part of Africa. So challenges like emergence of new disruptions in technology, challenges like climate change, also the changing global economic order. Because perhaps it is our generation for the first time which is grappling with how to regulate international currencies like the cryptocurrency, which does not have jurisdictions and which by definition does not want to be regulated. So I think these are very unique challenges that can be addressed only at the global level through a process of dialogue and discussion and deliberation. And this presents in itself a very unique opportunity for our generation throughout the world to arrive at consensus and harmony. The third point, briefly, Kanchanda, is that through the global experience, and especially in India, because we have seen this very closely, especially in the Northeast as well as Kashmir, one thing that has been repeatedly proven in the benefit of the young population is that strong political stability has always created prosperity for the young. Here we are in the northeast of India. Until very recently, this very region was prone to infiltration, prone to insurgency, and a lot of young people, generations together, were victims of this insurgency. But today, problems which were legacy problems for almost 2 decades, 3 decades, have all been resolved, and we see young people coming forward and taking up activism in democratic spaces. So the third point I would want to say is, whether it's in the Kashmir experience, where today there's a new blossoming of peace and prosperity, and young people, women, children, everybody is now going to theaters, movie theaters, watching movies for the very first time in decades. Or the experience of the Northeast, where young people are now going to colleges, universities, and trying to create new startups. Political stability and processes where the young have faith and trust in transparency, and they feel their voice is heard at the table, is a very, very important aspect of conflict and peace resolution. Until and unless the young, who are a very important stakeholder, feel that they have a role, their voice is heard, and they have a seat at the table, and they can craft their own destiny in democratic ways and methods, until such an ecosystem, enabling ecosystem is created, then the effort at long-term, long-lasting peace and conflict will always be very far away. Thank you so much, Dada.
General Dua, destiny, disruption, democracy. Within these 3 Ds, I think a lot of effort goes into making peace and keeping that peace. And the army or the armed forces have played a crucial role in this peacemaking and peacekeeping. I would request you to quickly come in on this and make a brief opening remark.
Thank you, thank you, Kanchanda. And Jai Hind, everybody. It's good to be back in awesome Assam. When I say be back, because, thank you. I say be back because as a young major, more than 2 decades ago, I was deployed over here, not very far, other side of the river in Mangaldoy district, then combating terrorism with Ulfa. As a Major General about a decade ago, I set up a new counter-terrorism force of Assam Rifles in Assam, in South Assam, Silchar. South Assam was under me, so was Mizoram and Tripura. So, Army does play a very important role. Armies are not an important role in the peace-building efforts. Armies are not meant to wage war. Armies are there to ensure peace. If you have a stronger army, your enemy will not dare to attack you. Now, as Kanchanda asked me to do, let me, before I talk about Army's efforts, very briefly try and talk about these few terms: peacekeeping, peacemaking. Peacemaking is easy to understand. Trying to broker peace between two warring sides is peacemaking. Peacekeeping is trying to ensure that once the peace has been made, then it does not, conflict does not reopen again. It does not lead to confrontation and conflict. Peacekeeping is a huge effort internationally. United Nations peacekeeping organization operations take place in many countries where peace has to be kept. And India, Indian Army, Indian Armed Forces, mainly Army, has been the largest contributor to peacekeeping operations around the world. We are the largest contributor, with over 200,000 troops have participated in these operations in about 49 missions out of the total 71 missions that UN has brokered. When I talk about peacekeeping, it's also the fact, let's also remember that India sent out Indian peacekeeping force at the request of Sri Lankan government in the late 80s. At the request of Maldives government, we sent out peacekeeping forces and ensured that a planned coup would not take place. And that is peacekeeping. Conflict resolution or reconciliation. Now that is a process which is the culmination where we have to try and resolve the conflict. And that can only be done by all of government approach, all of society approach, and all stakeholders have to be involved in that. For instance, what is happening in Kashmir today? We have come to a stage where we are trying to reconcile, stage of reconciliation, in which armed forces are also playing a part, but it's a whole of government and whole of society approach. What is peace building then? Peace building, by its definition, is larger than all these three. Peace building starts even before peacemaking and continues even after conflict resolution. Peace building involves creating different political groups, personal groups, ethnic groups, racial groups, strengthening the civil society, creating socio-economic conditions for socio-economic development. Peace building is an overarching term that extends beyond all three. And it can be easily explained by a very contemporary example. India or Indian Armed Forces are not involved in peacekeeping in Afghanistan in any way. But India is involved in peace building because India is extending help while we do not agree with the Taliban regime, but India is extending help to the people of Afghanistan. We have already spent $3 billion in various aids, infrastructure and medical programs. During the COVID crisis, we supplied huge number of vaccinations to Afghanistan. And in the budget announced last week, our Indian budget announced last week, rupees 200 crores has been allocated for the same process in Afghanistan itself. So peace building is an overarching bigger process. I would just like to end by talking about Kashmir once again. It is the peace building effort in Kashmir that Indian armed forces are very actively involved. The Indian administration is now providing conditions for socio-economic development. And how are they able to do that? They are able to do that because armed forces ensure that the level of violence have come down. There are no more of these strikes and hartals and bunds that we used to see in Kashmir earlier. I have been corps commander there. During those days, it was very difficult to move out. Today, the way the businesses are thriving, the tourists are thronging, where the way the civil society is getting involved in Kashmir, and soon we will have the political process that will start in the state, in the Union Territory, and I'm sure that is the time when the peace building would actually bear fruit. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. I mean, the world is one family. And this is also the theme for this year's G20. I mean, the G20 year which India is celebrating. Now, all of us know of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, but many are unaware that this comes from a sloka in the Upanishads. And the preceding words are very instructive. This is mine and that is yours is a very narrow way of looking at things, because Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one. There has been a lot of reference to insurgency in the Northeast, and in many ways the Northeast has been very unique to democracy building in India. Democracy building, when I say, I mean I refer to the constitutional democracy that we have adopted for our republic. And it was inevitable that there would be conflict. It was inevitable that there would be disagreements, there would be a certain amount of what we now call dissent. And also it was inevitable that the initial response to this disruption would have to be force to ensure that the state's supremacy is established. But subsequently, whether it is in Assam or anywhere else in the Northeast, we have seen the political process taking over. In Assam, we had the Assam Accord, we have had the Mizo Accord, we have had an agreement in Tripura, Manipur, the Bodo Accord. And the reason I mention all these agreements is that it is possible within the constitutional scheme of things to have such agreements which are very region-specific, place-specific. So today we hear of plurilateral arrangements in global affairs, 2 countries, 3 countries getting together to have their own agreement. And in India, we have had plurilateral agreements to maintain peace, to keep peace, and to harvest the benefits of peace. And one of the people who has played a very big role in this, in Assam, is Shri Gyanendra Pratap Singh, who has sort of experienced it from all aspects, from making eye contact with the insurgents, to brokering peace with them, getting them to agree to come overground and join the mainstream, the national mainstream. I would request Shri Singh to come in with his opening comments briefly, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Chief of Police of Assam, I would like to welcome all of you to the beautiful land of Assam. I came here about 3 decades back, 32 years to be exact, and I have fallen in love with this place. Your stay shorter, maybe a couple of days. I don't know whether you would have an opportunity to fall in love as much as I have, but I'm sure you would take back very fond memories. Whatever I would say today is based on my experience of handling insurgency in various theaters of so-called conflict. I call it so-called conflict for a reason. In Northeast, Assam specifically, Kashmir, Punjab, mainland, I have had extensive experience of working in different theaters. I have a completely different take on this. It is never about conflict. It is never about difference. It is never about reconciliation. Yeah. What has happened is that this paradigm change has come in last 8, 9 years, 10 years. We have started understanding as government, as security agencies, that it's about identification and understanding of different aspirations of the people. What most of us talk of as conflict is actually differing or parallel aspiration of people who are residing in a particular geography, or a set of people residing in one geography who have got parallel or different aspirations. Now, what has happened during the last 1 decade or so is that these aspirations have been identified, understood, and the government as a whole has started working on this. It's because of this, once people feel that it is not being seen as conflict, it is not being seen as a war, it is not being seen as insurgency, but it is an attempt on part of the government to identify and address those aspirations, that the peace has come. This is not only about Northeast, this is about different parts of the country. That is the part regarding what is being told today as reconciliation. Second, which is extremely important, equally important as this part of addressing the aspiration, is about de-weaponizing the system. Now, wherever there are parallel aspirations, people have tendency to gather weapons, and that is where Assam has always had a difficult situation, because we have 7 interstate boundaries, 2 international boundaries, and we also have 3 countries which are not exactly having borders, but who are in close proximity, and some of them have interests that are not very good for India, and the flow of weapons has always taken place. So this is the part which security agencies, whether it is armed forces or the central paramilitary forces or the state police, have always done, that is to de-weaponize the system. Once you de-weaponize the system and then you identify understand and address the aspiration. Development and peace is the only option. It is the only thing that would happen, and that is what is happening today in Assam. When 2-3 years back, the entire Assam had what is called as Armed Forces Special Powers Act. Now today we have a situation where the Armed Forces Special Powers Act from Assam is almost gone. It is just left in about 27-28% of the geographical area of Assam. Insurgency is gone from almost entire state except 5 districts in Upper Assam, which are bordering Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh, which also because of which continues because of some international associations of those geographies. Other than that, Assam is absolutely peaceful, and those who want to stay longer, they should roam around and see the beautiful land. Once again, welcome all of you to Assam. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have with us today two panelists who come from a very interesting background. Both of them were part of the insurgency in Assam. Both of them chose to give up arms and join the mainstream. So we thought of inviting them to share their stories with you. And I will begin with Mr. Bipul Kalita, who was part of the Ulfa insurrection over here. Mr. Kalita, 3 minutes.
Namaskar. Apoloke শুভেচ্ছা জনাইছো।
I think his mic is not working, so you can give him this mic.
আমি যেতিয়া অসম আন্দোলনৰ যেটো বটা অসমত বলিছিলে, সেই অসম আন্দোলনৰ বটাৰ পিছত অসমত এটা পৰিৱেশ সৃষ্টি হৈছিলে। সেই পৰিৱেশৰ লগত সংগতি ৰাখি আমি অসমৰ, মই বুলি নহয় অসমৰ সেই সময়ত সকলো জনসাধাৰণে এটা গতিত গুচি গৈছিলে। আৰু সেই সময়তে আমি সংযুক্ত মুক্তি বাহিনী অসম চমুকৈ আলফাত আমি যোগদান কৰিছিলোঁ। আৰু আমাৰ এটা সপোন আছিলে, সেই সময়ত দেখিছিলোঁ যে আমি অসমখন স্বাধীন কৰি অসমখন সুকীয়াভাৱে থাকিব লাগে বুলি আমি ভাবি পেলাই যিটো আশা লৈ পেলাই আমি গৈছিলোঁ। আৰু তাত গৈ পেলাই আমি 14 বছৰীয়া যিটো কাৰ্যকাল সংগঠনত জয়েন কৰাৰ পিছত 14 বছৰীয়া যিটো কাৰ্যকাল, সেই কাৰ্যকালত গৈ পেলাই আমি যিটো দেখিলোঁ বা যিখিনি পালোঁ, যিখিনি আমি হেৰুৱালোঁ, সেই কথাখিনিকে মই আপোনালোকৰ আগত আজি শ্বেয়াৰ কৰিবলৈ লৈছোঁ। মই 1986 চনত সংগঠনত যোগদান কৰিছিলোঁ। যোগদান কৰি অসমত আমি বিভিন্ন জিলাত বিভিন্ন ৰাজ্যত গৈ পেলাই আমি কাম কৰিছিলোঁ। তাৰপিছতে আমি কাছিনলৈ গৈছিলোঁ, কাছিনত ট্ৰেইনিং কৰিছিলোঁ, ঘূৰি আহিছিলোঁ। তাৰপিছত আমি অসমৰ মানুহক সেই আমাৰ যি সপোন বুলি ভাবিছিলোঁ তেতিয়া, সেই সপোনৰ বিষয়ে আমি অসমৰ মানুহক বুজাইছিলোঁ যে অসমত এনেকৈ এনেকৈ হ'ব লাগে, অসমখন এনেকুৱা হ'ব লাগে, ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ লগত থাকিব নালাগে। কিন্তু সেই সময়ত যিটো গতি আছিল, অসম আন্দোলনৰ যিটো ধাৰাবাহিক গতি, সেই গতিৰ ফলত আমি যিটো বতাহত আমি গুচি গৈছিলোঁ। আৰু তাৰপিছত গৈ পেলাই আমি যেতিয়া আহি পেলাই আকৌ অসমৰ মানুহৰ মাজত আমি যেতিয়া সোমাইছিলোঁ, আৰু পিছত শেহতীয়াকৈ যেতিয়া আমি দেখিছিলোঁ যে এই সংগ্ৰামখনৰ আমি যিটো পথেৰে গৈছোঁ, সেই পথটোত গৈ পেলাই যে আমাৰ কোনো মানে ভৱিষ্যত নাই, সেই বস্তুটো আমি তেতিয়া তাত বুজি পাইছিলোঁ। বুজি পাই পেলাই আমি আকৌ 2000 চনত যেতিয়া মূল সুঁতিলৈ গুচি আহিছিলোঁ, তেতিয়াও আমি বিভিন্ন ধৰণৰ জনসাধাৰণৰ লগত আমি সময়ে সময়ে কথাবিলাক আলোচনা কৰিছিলোঁ। তেতিয়া আমি গম পাইছিলোঁ যে আমি যি 14টা বসন্ত আমি নিয়ালোঁ, এই 14টা বসন্তৰ আমাৰ কি হ'ল, অসমৰ 2% মানুহৰ বাদে বাকী 98% মানুহে আমি যিটো পথত গৈছিলোঁ বা আমি যিটো বিচাৰি গৈছিলোঁ, সেই বস্তুটো তেওঁলোকে বিচৰা নাছিলে, আৰু আজিও সেই বস্তুটো বিচৰা নাই। আৰু সেই সময়ত দিল্লীৰ লগত অসমৰ যিটো দূৰত্ব আছে, আজিৰ যিটো অসমৰ লগত দিল্লীৰ যিটো সম্বন্ধ, আৰু সেই সময়ৰ যিটো অসমৰ ৰাজনৈতিক, সামাজিক, অৰ্থনৈতিক, সাংস্কৃতিক যিটো বাতাবৰণ আছিলে, আজিৰ যিটো বাতাবৰণ, এই সময়ৰ লগত যিটো পৰিৱৰ্তন হৈছে, গতিকেলৈ সেই তেতিয়াৰ যিটো বতাহ আৰু আজিৰ যিটো মানে ব্যৱস্থা অসমৰ যোগাযোগ ব্যৱস্থাই হওক এখন ঠাই উন্নতি হ'বলৈ হ'লে তাত প্ৰথমতে এই যোগাযোগ ব্যৱস্থাটো খুব জৰুৰী সেই ব্যৱস্থাটো আজি আমাৰ অসমত আমি সকলোতে দেখিবলৈ পাইছিলোঁ সেই সময়ত ব্ৰহ্মপুত্ৰত এখন দুখন দলং আছিলে আজি 10-12খন দলং হ'বলৈ গৈ আছে অসমৰ শিক্ষানুষ্ঠানসমূহৰ এতিয়া উন্নতি আমি দেখিছোঁ মেডিকেল কলেজবিলাক হৈছে শিক্ষাৰ ব্যৱস্থাটো আগবাঢ়ি গৈছে গতিকেলৈ সেই ব্যৱস্থাখিনিত আমি দেখি পেলাই এতিয়া ভাবিছোঁ যে সেই যিটো ধাৰণা সেই ধাৰণাটো আমাৰ সেই সময়ত ভুল আছিল
Mr. Kalita will take a break here so that he can translate what he has said.
Greetings to everyone. During the time of Assam agitation, there was a situation when the people of Assam were influenced to stay separate. They thought that they should be separated from the India. And so at that time we joined Alpha and we thought wrongly that freedom and separation should be our goal. In the 14 years that we spent in Alpha, we saw that what we wanted, we went to several states of the Northeast India. We went to Kachin for training. And we thought at that time that Assam should be separate. But when we came back, we lost our 14 years and we realized is that what we thought Assamese people wanted is not what they actually wanted. The relationship between Delhi, the central government, and Assam at that time was very different. Now it is a very different situation. Things have improved substantially. Communication has improved. Bridges have been built, and several institutions, educational institutions, were built during the last few years. So the idea that we had at that time, I don't think that was a correct one.
Thank you.
এতিয়া আমি সংগঠনৰ পৰা ওলাই অহাৰ পিছত সামাজিকভাৱে যিখিনি কৰি আছোঁ আৰু নিজক চলিবৰ কাৰণে যিখিনি কৰিছোঁ সমাজৰ কাৰণে কাম কৰিবৰ বাবে চিন্তা কৰিবলৈ আমি এটা অৰ্গেনাইজেশ্যন কৰিছিলোঁ এটা NGO সেই NGOৰ জৰিয়তে আমি 16 চনৰ পৰা মই এটা স্বচ্ছ ভাৰতৰ লগত সংগতি ৰাখি পেলাই মানে গোটেই ডোৰ টু ডোৰ কালেকশ্যন আৰু মেডিকেলবিলাকৰ যিটো বায়োমেডিকেল ৱেষ্ট জেনেৰেল ৱেষ্ট এই গোটেই বস্তুখিনি আমি ডিছপ'জ কৰাৰ যিটো প্ৰক্ৰিয়া সেই প্ৰক্ৰিয়াটো আৰম্ভ কৰি পেলাই আমি এতিয়া নিজকে সংস্থাপন কৰাৰ লগতে সমাজখন পৰিষ্কাৰভাৱে ৰখাৰ লগতে আৰু নিজে 10-15জন মানুহক আমি এই NGOৰ জৰিয়তে সংস্থাপন দি পেলাই আমি বৰ্তমান চলি আছোঁ আৰু এইখিনি ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ যিটো প্ৰধানমন্ত্ৰীৰ যিটো স্বচ্ছ ভাৰত অভিযান তাৰ লগত আমি সংগতি ৰাখি পেলাই এই কামখিনি কৰিছোঁ এতিয়া আমি আকৌ জাবৰৰ পৰা যিটো সাৰ বনোৱাৰ যিটো ছিষ্টেম পদ্ধতি তাৰ পৰা আমি এতিয়া কিছুমান মেচিন বহাইছোঁ মেচিন বহাই আমি তাতে সাৰ প্ৰস্তুত কৰিবৰ কাৰণে আমি ব্যৱস্থা কৰিছোঁ আৰু তাৰ জৰিয়তে নিজকে সংস্থাপন কৰাৰ লগতে আমি অন্য বহু সদস্যক সংস্থাপন দি পেলাই মই মোৰ জীৱিকা নিৰ্বাহ কৰাৰ লগতে সেই পৰিয়ালসকলৰ জীৱিকা নিৰ্বাহটো কৰি আছোঁ
Thank you.
After leaving the organization, I started an NGO inspired by the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, which would collect waste, specifically medical waste for medical waste disposal, which should keep the society clean, and we have also provided employment for several other people. Now we are going into more mechanized mode, and we are implementing machineries which would create compost from the waste that we have collected. Thanks.
So ultimately it was the peace dividend, which is development, that sort of drew him over to the national mainstream in India. We also have with us Mr. Binual Wari. He was part of the Bodo disruption, NDFB. And he has also given up a life of violence, or a life which saw violence as the currency to assert and achieve demands. He gave that up, and he also chose the path of peace over conflict and development over insurrection. So, Mr. Wari, if you could come in briefly. We are slightly running behind time, so if you could make your comment as brief as possible. Would you be speaking in English or Assamese? Okay, please.
नहीं कर रहे so, अच्छा
Thank you very much, sir, for giving this opportunity to speak a few words. Basically, I will not speak technically because this agenda, it is especially in peacekeeping and peace building and development of the nation. Anyway, I belong to a community, Bodo community, and partially or wholly, you may be aware of that last on 2020, 27 January, there was an accord, peace agreement with the government of India. Before that, in our region, there were lots of problems, insurgency, and the violence, intolerance in our region. But gradually, after that agreement, peace agreement, now all those incidents, all those happenings were disappeared, and the peoples are now, in our region, the peoples are now engaged in their developmental activities, and many of us are engaging in the peace initiatives, works, and the like. Now, my point of view is that today in this platform, I would like to really thanks to the government for the very much proactive roles in solving such problems. Now, little bit earlier, our dignitaries have spoken regarding all those things. Now, I myself was a member of such an organization, you may know or may not know, that NDFB, this is National Democratic Front of Bodoland. It wasn't like insurgent groups. But behind that, there were many reasons. I do not want to go behind that. But the thing is that development and peace is necessary everywhere. Earlier, we witnessed lots of conflicts. Like me, many youths were losing their lives, and many properties and many youth powers all were misused. And we were not able to connect with the mainstream, and we were lagging behind somewhere. Now, from my side, from our side, world is developing in its climax level, and we were lagging somewhere behind. That was the main thing that we had come to the negotiation, had come to the discussion. And especially, I must thank this government, because this government and the officers, they identified exact problems. They identified the need of the hours, what were needed to be done. So, in further times also, we are very eager, we are hopeful that our regions are still not developed too much. Somewhere or in some ground, still we are lagging behind. I hope this government will carry it out, and our country, India, and our state, Assam, and our friends and our here and there ones will develop gradually. And we are hopeful that peace will prevail everywhere, and the developmental activities will be initiated everywhere. Thank you very much for giving this opportunity to speak a few words, and I must conclude with this.
Conflict, peace, development. Shri Hiren Chandra Nath, who's additional DGP Assam, has been intimately involved with the integration or reintegration of people who were involved with insurgencies in the northeast, in Assam, into the national mainstream, into the larger democratic structure of the Republic of India. I would request him to share some thoughts briefly, sir. Your experience, I mean, what makes it tick? What makes people who were firmly entrenched in a very disruptive and at times even violent insurgency to cross over? And then how do we rehabilitate them? So if we can then go into the question answer session.
I welcome you to this beautiful spot in the face of Mother Earth called Assam. It's a lovely country, lovely place, full of biodiversity. In the meanwhile, I think we were exposed to all these beautiful things of this place.
I think your mic is
थोड़ा ऊपर. Yeah, I'll repeat again. I welcome you to this beautiful spot on the face of Mother Earth called Assam. It is one of the beautiful spot, most fertile land on this earth. This is full of biodiversity and flora and fauna, and of course, it is known as a garden of ethnicity. At the very beginning, Minister Sir has mentioned about the biodiversity, ethnicity of this land. Another very important point, Assam is situated in the northeast corner of the country. It is connected with a very narrow corridor, 24 kilometers corridor. It is popularly known as Siliguri corridor. 7 states, now Sikkim is also added to it. So 8 states in the northeast, which will very popularly, very frequently mention. If India has 7 neighboring countries, you will find that 4 neighboring countries are surrounded in this cap of northeast. China, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Bhutan, and slightly away, Nepal. Now, why youths were attracted to militancy? There is a saying that before 25, if you are not a socialist, then you don't have heart. And after 25, if you are a socialist, then you don't have a brain. That is, before 25, you are always rebellious. You don't want to listen to reasoning. You try to solve the problem in your own way. But after 25, when you mature, when you see the colors of life, you go out of your home, you see the problem of the people, then you change your mindset, and then you are run not by your heart but by your brain. That is by logic, that is by reasoning, and all these things. This happened to these 2 gentlemen. When they were 23, 24, they joined a militant organization, but after 14, 15 years, when they found this is totally a futile exercise, violence cannot bring anything, only it can bring destruction. During the last 3 decades, we fought insurgency here in Assam. Mainly on 2-3 premises, these boys were misguided by the militant leaders. One is sense of deprivation. Second was sense of negligence or alienation. That we are far off from the mainstream, we are always neglected, our natural resources are taken away, something like this. But when they entered and they found that it is nothing, taking these premises, these leaders were just exploiting these people, exploiting resources of this place. We suffered. There was backwardness, no industry, no development process, but we fought back at the cost, of course, heavy losses. We lost more than 4,000 civilians during the last 3 decades, more than 3,000 militant leaders, and more than 1,000 security forces. at the cost of 10,000 lives. Of course, we have fought back, and now you have seen, as our DG sir has mentioned, you can go to any part of the state and it is totally peace, and it is the time of now peace, development and advancement. Now, we fought insurgency on from four angles. One is constant operation against these militants. Second is constant negotiations with the militants group. Third is surrender, ceasefire and rehabilitation. And fourth is very strong community policing and developmental process. About insurgency, about fighting insurgency, my former speaker have mentioned. Now I will come to the rehabilitation, how we are rehabilitating the people. During the last 2 years, we have adopted different means. Last 3 decades, of course, there was different kind of experiments for rehabilitating these former militants, but sometimes it was successful, sometimes it was partially successful. There were instances where the militants again, surrendered militants again joined the militant outfits, or they formed a new militant outfits, which we call recycling of militancy. But last 5 years or so, we have not seen this. There has been some kind of attempt, but we could neutralize this thing at the very first attempt. So far, rehabilitation is concerned, we are adopting following two principles, or this is mainly two schemes, you can say. One is the formulated by the Government of India, which we call surrender cum rehabilitation scheme under the Ministry of Home Affairs. What we do there, we give a fixed deposit of 4 lakhs rupees to each and every individual militants, which will be matured after only 3 years. And there will be joint signature by the individual militant and by the intelligence head of the state police. So during these 3 years, what a militant or a former militant will do, showing this fixed deposit, they can get a loan of 3,20,000. Now they have the money what to do, because most of the militants, this thing, they have some problems. Problem is this: during their formative stage, during their youth, they were away from the society. They were only trained to handle a gun only, sophisticated weapon. And they were accustomed with working in a particular group under the command of a particular leader. So they were lacking soft skill, they were lacking communicating the common people. Now suddenly if you start a shop, they won't be able to run this thing because they don't have that soft skill. They do not have the habit of getting adverse question to them. So suppose a customer comes and start bargaining, so they become very angry. So they do not have the habit of listening to this, only giving order that you give money, you come to my place, like this. So after giving this money, of course, through all bank accounts, no cash amount, through all bank accounts, and bank account will be connected to the other, so that there is no misuse of this amount. Then we will be training them under very important or very reputed government training institutes like SIPR and the State Institute of Panchayat and Rural Development, KVIC, Khadi and Village Industries Commission, KVK, Kisan Vikas Kendra, then Skill Development Mission. So we give them first orientation training. We do some interest mapping, that suppose in this organization there are 300 boys and girls, what they want to do. So some would be interested in suppose horticulture, some will be interested in some veterinary, some will be interested in fisheries, something like this. Then we make them into different, divide them into different groups, and the expert goes, talk to them, give them some orientation training, and with this we tie up with the banks and they get a loan. And today I could not give a visual presentation. There are enough visual presentation. Subsequently sometime I will be able to give you. So during the last 2 years, more than 7,000 former militants, they were given money, they were given training, and today they are practicing all these things so that they can very meaningfully merge with the society. Just they are not earning a livelihood. Now the gentleman Vipul Kalita, he said what he is doing, that for earning his livelihood, he has connected himself with Swachh Bharat mission. He is going to the hospitals, collecting the garbage, forming an NGO and imbibing this habit of cleanliness among the community. So he is earning a livelihood, but livelihood in a different way, so that it can give something back to the society. So in this way,
sorry to interrupt, but we are now running out of time.
So in this way, we have rehabilitated more than 7,000 former militants during the last 3 years only. Now 6 more groups are under negotiation. This process is going on. I hope that within a very short period, we will be able to sign some memorandum of settlement with them, and they will also be rehabilitated. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now we are open for questions. I'm sure you have thought up your questions. We will. Okay, now keep your questions very sharp, very brief. We don't want lectures, we don't want counter views, we just want a question. Okay, now I will begin with this young lady over here.
Namaskar. One of the speakers has pointed out the importance of employment, and I would like to know what is the strategy regarding the fact that in the near future, a lot of jobs, a lot of tasks will be replaced by artificial intelligence, which can lead to unemployment and to frustration.
Thank you, but I think future of jobs is a separate session. You can take your question over there. This session is about conflict, peace, development. Yes, sir.
Namaste. So my question is about, like Ajit Doval has once mentioned about 4th generation warfare. So I wanted to know about perspective of law enforcement agencies and the security agencies, because we are in the age of information warfare. So the common citizens are also, victims and also source of the insurgencies or things like that.
So General Singh, would you like to take that, sir?
See, basically every audible?
Yeah, it's working.
The process is not centered on 1 or 2 agencies. The process is all-encompassing. Everybody has to get involved in it. We want to ensure that reconciliation takes place in actuality. So it starts with identification, it starts with weaning them out, it starts with retraining and skilling them, it starts with people in the society accepting them and giving them the confidence that they are part of it. So it's an all-encompassing thing, not relegated to few agencies.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Where are the ladies? I'm actually looking for a lady, yeah. Can we get a mic over here?
So much of light.
Somebody here.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So, as we have known about the role of government officers and other political leaders and all. So my question is, as a common people, what will be their roles in maintaining peace and order? Like common people have some duties. So what will be their duties?
That's a very good point. In our pre-session consultations we had just now, I did mention this point that when we are dealing with such a huge youth mass, we need to also talk about responsibilities when we talk about rights. I mean, it's your right to dissent, but where does that right end and your responsibility begin? Tejaswiji, would you like to take this, please?
Yes. Very valid intervention that you have made. The world is not globe. The world is its people. And society at the building block is the individual. So I think as long as we do not create an ecosystem where the individuals feel at peace with themselves and can feel they're part of an ecosystem where they can fulfill their true human potential, distinct to their individual nature, then the competing aspirations, competing identities will always clash. So the important point here is about how we must realize that the right to dissent stops at disruption, because disruption does not do good to anybody. Disruption only creates more conflict, and conflict only breeds more violence, and violence does not result in prosperity or opportunities for anybody. So I think as a society, if we look at, for example, I was told yesterday that there was a music concert where Papon, a very popular music rock star from Assam, performed. So when young people, and there's more society to society, people to people movements in the area of, say, music, in the area of, say, economic opportunity sharing, and also aspects like yoga, because at the end, true oneness at the global level as well as at the individual level can happen only if there is an underlying spiritual oneness. And when people at the individual level start identifying everybody and everything around as one. So I think as individual common people, using the term that you said, as common citizens, being aware that creating a political system that is transparent, responds to the aspirations of the young, encouraging more people-to-people contact in areas that are strictly not, say, political, but which will create the enabling environment for more culture and more conversations. I think there, the role of the common citizens play a very important role.
Thank you. Over here in the center.
Hello. Sir, warm good morning. Actually, I have a question, like what might be the possibilities that limit the youth's engagement towards peace building, and what must be done to enable them as active agents of peace building?
No, we have gone through that. They explained, each one of them explained. That is not a question. Yeah, please. Do we have a question here? Yeah. You can speak up, we can hear you.
Namaste. So as General Dua already mentioned that in the recent 2023-24 budget, we had some funds outlaid for the neighboring countries, and for Afghanistan, I think 200 crores have been allocated so that we could basically aid the people of Afghanistan. But since we know the regime in Afghanistan, it is not a very responsible one. So how do we ensure that the fund that has been allocated for the people, it basically reaches the people and it comes to their help, since a lot of NGOs, they have stopped operations in the country. So how are we going to ensure that the fund basically reaches the people for whom it is meant?
Well, there is a mechanism for it. We use the UN route to disburse aid and assistance in conflict zones. If I can get someone asking a more specific question. Yes, please. Leadership in peace building. General Dua?
This was for me?
General Dua, would you like to come in on that?
Asked the question specifically for
Okay, thank you.
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah. Maybe after this, just take a minute to answer. Yeah. I think leadership plays a very critical role in peace building. We have seen this at the global level. We have also seen it at the Indian context. We mentioned earlier in the discussion of how in the last 8 years, there has been tremendous success, especially in the Northeast, towards conflict resolution. And many young people coming, leaving arms, giving up arms and coming to democratic processes. This could not have happened without a strong political leadership that the country is today witnessing under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And this is true at the global level as well as at the local level. In addition to that, I want to just make one more point. If you look at the tradition of leadership in India, whether it is spiritual, whether it's social, or whether it is political, from the time of Buddha or Gandhi, or today at the time of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the country's leadership, whenever it has offered solutions at the global level, has always been one that has furthered the cause of peace and global prosperity. Which is why today, if you go even to the east of India, whether it's in China or Japan or Southeast Asia, you will see how deep the influence of Buddhism is. In the same way, the kind of influence that Gandhi had on the social sphere, whether it was inspiring Martin Luther King Jr. or whether it was inspiring Nelson Mandela, that was the kind of inspiration that Mahatma Gandhi gave at the social sphere. And today at the global level, through G20's leadership and through India's championing of the global south, the Prime Minister's leadership is again pioneering a new era of no war, an era of peace and prosperity for all. In that sense, leadership is very critical to ushering in peace and prosperity for the people of the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm afraid, like all good things, this session too has to end. I wish we could go on, but we can't do that. Thank you, everybody, and a very big, let's have a very big round of applause for the panelists. It was a pleasure being here. It was a pleasure being among such a big gathering of young India. Thank you once again.
So we have come to an end of a wonderful session. I'd like to thank our moderator and our panelists for the enlightening discussion. I'd like to also thank Professor Priyanku Sharma and Professor Anamika Borua, faculty of IIT Guwahati, for being here for the translation. Now I would like to request Professor Parameshwar K. Iyer, Director IIT Guwahati, to give away the mementos as a token of appreciation. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.